Alrighty. Welcome again. Today we're going to be talking about smart cities and some of the things that we might expect in our future through smart cities. And we're going to talk about what smart cities are. We're going to talk about a couple other things today. And smart cities is on the agenda. So, Johnny, you want to say your piece? And I guess we'll just get her going.
Hi, everybody. I'm Johnny Midnight, and tonight, as Element said, we are talking about smart cities. Smart cities are what you probably will be living in within the next 20 to 30 years. Yes, these this living paradigm is something that we're going to experience within our lives if you're listening.
I think the first thing we should get into today is 5G, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
So for anybody that is not aware of what 5G is, 5G is basically their antennas. And these antennas are going to be able to provide more bandwidth for internet as well as cell phone reception and various other forms of technology. And the purpose for this 5G is that we currently use 4G at the moment. And they want to increase the bandwidth and reception and Wi-Fi with 5G. And so, as I think it is as of late this year, they're going to be putting up, if they haven't already, the 5G networks. And here's the problem with the 5G networks. Yes, they'll be able to provide instantaneous internet, basically. What 5G is going to be able to provide is, let's say you can download a movie in about 30 seconds. And internet cell phone reception will be instantaneous through these 5G antennas. But the problem is the side effects that these 5G antennas are going to cause on people. Some of the side effects that I have read on what 5G does to people is, number one, radiation. 4G has problems going through certain buildings like brick and concrete, but 5G can go through anything. And so basically that would be the equivalent of you standing next to a radio and antenna 24/7. That is not good for your health, of course. The side effects can be radiation, hearing voices, skin rashes, problems sleeping, mental health problems, also suggestive things going on in the head where you'll hear certain things happen that aren't really there, and the list goes on. I don't have the full list in front of me, but from my own memory, I can recall that the side effects of this 5G network is not good. Now, this ties into the smart cities, because there is a document, or not a document, a program or a plan known as the Resilient Cities Program, which goes into how there is, from what I read, 100 different cities, including ones that are not in the US, so foreign European countries and elsewhere, Asian countries as well, that are going to be implementing the program of the Resilient Cities Program. What I believe is that the Resilient Cities Program is the smart cities. These are going to be cities that are going to have smart technology, which I will get into that in a moment. But Johnny, you talked about, God, I've lost memory already, about what was the city that you were referring to with that V chick?
Oh, yeah, there's a series of 4 possible cities that you can live in by 2040 called Plandopolis.
Yeah,
this was information that was disseminated on YouTube way back in 2011, and they were talking about different types of societies that you could expect to live in by 2040. V was the happy sheeple that was the citizen of any one of these cities. And, Plandopolis, some of them were called like Renewa Bad. Another one was like called Communicity, which of course was sort of like neo-communism. And they also had one that was like more of a corporate kleptocracy, where you were, living under the boot of corporations and oligarchs. You'll be living under the boot of an oligarch in every one of these possible scenarios. But if you go on YouTube and just search for Plandopolis, you'll be able to see all four aspects that this might, take form in.
Well, let's talk about what we might expect into a smart city. In the future, and this has been part of, the agenda, is that they want to introduce transhumanism. Now, think of transhumanism like augmentations. In other words, let's say you'll have, instead of wearing glasses, you'll have something input into your temple or something like that. Anything of the body that is augmented. It can be prosthetics. It can be glasses or like hologram screens, it can go on. Anything that has to do with the augmentation of the body with the implication or the implantation, I'm messing up my words, of technology. And something that I was watching that inspired me to want to make this podcast was I was watching a documentary. It was kind of like a put together clips of various different things from the internet of talking about this. And there was, I think it was from a movie, but I don't know which one it was. It looked like it was a low independent thing, but there was this city. It was a smart city where they had, now let's talk about smart cities before I mention that. So what is a smart city? Well, a smart city can be thought of as a city that has a very sophisticated development of technology. So surveillance cameras that have facial recognition software, that monitor your heartbeat, what you bought, where you went, where you were at, where you're going. They can read facial expressions on your face of what mood you're in, and et cetera. They know literally everything down to your heart rate through this technology.
It also goes into the home too. You'll have televisions that are taking screenshots of your face and using facial recognition, smart water meters, smart energy meters, all these different gauges of your caloric intake and output.
Yeah, and that just reminded me of the TV show called Black Mirror, which there is an episode in the first season, I think, talking about what they would, and also this is another thing that to expect is social credit, a social credit system, which Black Mirror explained. So you will have, and they're already doing this in China too, and in China they have the facial recognition stuff as well. But in China, they're doing the social credit system where if you're late for work, if you got arrested, if you had a domestic dispute, if you didn't pay your utility bill, if you didn't do a good job at work, you will have credits that will either be added or detracted from your social credit rating. And so in a smart city, you can bet your bottom dollar that will be also another social blueprint of how the dynamics of social engineering work as well. And so you'll have a social credit system, but you'll also have augmented people. Now this goes back to the 5G thing that we were talking about. And this is the problem with 5G again, is that the radiation and the side effects of what this is going to affect on people, I believe that they're going to they're putting up these 5G networks because of all of the future of all of this wireless technology that is going to be advanced in the future, where phones are going to be done away with. Now it's all going to be like in your wrist or a wearable device. And because they're going to move people towards that, they're going to have the bandwidth to be able to provide that reception. So they're going to need 5G to do that. And but in the future, we have to look further down the line. In a smart city, which I like to equate to a FEMA city, because FEMA is not necessarily, in my opinion, going to be a concentration camp. I think FEMA is going to be a smart city. Yes, there will be concentration camps, I'm pretty sure, in these smart cities, but I think that's another way of looking at it. Now, another reason why they're going to need 5G is because people are going to be augmented, and that's another level of all the wireless technology that people are walking around with, that and also establishments are going to have this stuff. They're all going to need a lot amount of bandwidth to provide that. Now, the con of it is that of the side effects of how this is going to be. When I was watching that clip of that documentary thing, there was the augmented people, and then there was the non-augmented people. There were two different classes of people. And the people that were what they would call human, they refer to them as human, because in the smart city, they want to advance the population to be augmented. They will be a step above human. And they will move the population to think that anybody that is non-augmented is not doing their part and they're outdated, because you're not with the technology. They'll push this notion that you're not helping better the humanity's evolution towards something greater. So you're done away with and you're outdated and we don't want you here.
That's how they'll sell it, yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of the idea that was kind of, I saw through that. So you're going to have augments and non-augments. And the people that are augmented, and I'll throw this to you, Johnny, the people that are augmented were able to go into buildings and buy things and have a job in the social credit system. They were on the grid, on top of another grid, basically. And those who were not were homeless. They were poor. They couldn't have a job, and they were cast down upon. So, Johnny, what do you think about all that? Do you see that's kind of a possibility there? It just seems to me that, I guess the question I'll ask you is, we mentioned Paul Athley's work briefly in some of our previous podcasts. Do you think that we're entering in the realms of what they would call absolute death? And could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, absolute death is basically taking your reality, your existence, lower than this one, lower than the corposa. Remember, above us, we have the Heil. Right now, we live underneath it in the corposa. We are trying to create yet another hypostatic layer. And that is exactly what we're doing. We're trying to take humanity into the realm from the living into that of the unliving. And by cybernetically altering yourself, you are getting closer and closer to that degree of absolute death. Okay, absolute death is being as far away from the pleroma as you can possibly get. You're no longer, eventually you might not even be carbon-based life form. You might be inorganic chemistry.
Well, you'll definitely won't be human after all those augmentations.
No, you won't. And for instance, Philip K. Dick touched upon this topic in his book A Scanner Darkly, where the main character, Bob Arctor, and his on-again, off-again girlfriend, Donna, were going into a shopping mall. And for some reason, Donna was allowed into the shopping mall because her credit card was scanned at the door, and it would allow the door to open to let her go in and shop. Bob, however, his credit card was outdated, or there was something wrong with it, and he had to wait outside for her. And he could not purchase goods and services from that mall because the scanning screen wouldn't allow his credit card to let him into the arena of shopping.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's this is also what a lot of people mention of this mark of the beast thing, where you're not able to buy or sell. And I'm pretty sure that through augmentation and through this, what I like, let's just, it's a form of, what's the word for it? I'll think of it in a minute. But this is basically what is talked about a lot with this whole mark of the beast thing.
That's a form of preclusion. We can preclude people who are not wearing or, do not have this mark embedded in them. And if you don't have that mark embedded in you, you cannot take advantage of commonplace activities like shopping, buying, or selling.
Exactly. And that is what, I think we will see manifest itself through this technology. And that's why those who are not with it, they don't have the augmentations, will not be part of the group because of the way that the higher dimensional aspects, as well as, lower dimensional aspects, with how they have, they're trying to push these smart cities, you have to get with it, and the jobs and all of that. So in these cities, I envision, those a bunch of augmented people, like the game Deus Ex, walking around. And as a matter of fact, I just bought the recent Deus Ex game, and it's all about smart cities. It's about smart cities in Prague, and there is a big battle going on between, well, I wouldn't say a battle, but there's hackers that are in these cities that are trying to hack the technology to try to stop it. And it just so happens that a document or an article I was reading to Johnny before we came on air was one of the predictions that they mentioned for the reason to implement the Smart Cities program was going to be the increase of cyber warfare. So it seems to me that they know that people are going to hack this stuff because they know it's going to be bad for them. So they're going to try to stop it before they already see it coming.
Yeah, there's also another video game that is touches upon this subject called Watch Dogs. It takes place in a future Chicago where a single divorced father, no surprise, is he's like, I guess, type of white hat hacker or something like that. But the entire city of Chicago is completely connected wirelessly in a surveillance grid. It's really a strange adventure to go through, as you're playing this character and you're interacting with these new technologies that spy on you, while you can also spy on other people.
Mm-hmm. And that game Observer is another one. Now let's talk about some of the side effects that some of this augmentation might come about. Well, there's a game called Observer, and it's about a detective, a cop who is augmented, and he gets a call to respond to a murder in an apartment complex. And the technology that this guy has allows him to recreate the crime scene through certain pieces of evidence to kind of put together what might have happened. So this is kind of how some of this technology would be at play or at use with certain jobs like law enforcement. They would have the ability to recreate a crime scene through holographic means to put together a possible scenario of what happened. I mean, this is a whole nother topic, but it's Minority Report is what it comes down to in that regard of enforcement. But some of the side effects that began to happen in this character's game was that he started seeing demonic manifestations. Also, the characters within the game's plot were not the main characters, but the AI characters. The problem was that at some points, if they were not able to pay for their medical augmentation, so let's say, for example, you have diabetes, you would have an augmentation that would inject insulin wirelessly so that you didn't have to worry about it into your body through the medical company that provided that augmentation to you. And if you didn't pay the medical company your bill by the end of the month, they would wirelessly shut off that augmentation. So
Yeah,
people,
or you can do the same thing with people who need oxygen. People that are hooked upon oxygen breathers and things like that. That we'll just shut it off wirelessly, and if you don't pay your bill. Then again, you could live in another type of smart city where, well, yeah, this is all free, but maybe it's based on social credit. Maybe if somebody gets a traffic ticket, well, you're not going to be allowed to drive, but you have some sort of little public infraction. Well, maybe that will push your social credit too low to where they cut off your oxygen or some sort of biomedical need that you have. We take a look at like instances, especially that attack men, like what's going on in France now with Marlena Schiappa. What if a man gets too many demerits on his social credit for ogling a woman or asking a woman out that doesn't like him, or speaking to a woman without being spoken to, and she reports that. Well, that will lower his social credit, and that is going to be the currency by which somebody in, say, a cashless society would have to worry about. There's always got to be an amount, there always has to be a currency.
Yeah, and I think that it's going to more than likely be a mixture of both of those scenarios where you will have, the medical augmentation of it, aspect of it, where they'll shut off that due to the fact that your social credit has gone down because you didn't pay your bills. So this is going to be trying to conceive of how many different angles, which is why I think most people don't care, because it's hard. I mean, believe me, it's
sure.
When I research this stuff, it's like it's insane amounts of information they got, just trying to keep track of all the stuff that they're going to do is almost impossible. So you have to take, you got to look 10 minutes there, 10 minutes there, 10 minutes there, and then you put all three of them together and you got, so I got a picture with that. And so most people, I think it's a lot of hard work. I mean, I spend most of my day researching this stuff, if not all of the day. So to try to get people to stay on top of this stuff is very difficult, which is where we come in to a degree, to try to simplize it, keep it simple, and kind of give them a briefing, if you will, of what we see. Now, aside from that, I think that the esoteric aspects of what the implications of something like this would be is obviously going to be demonic because of, like I was mentioning, the game Observer. This character started seeing demonic stuff go wrong, and I wouldn't be surprised in the future that you hear news stories where people are pulling out their augmentations or cutting their arms off or whatever because the augments aren't working properly. And it even mentions that in the Bible, believe it or not, that God, I wish I'd pulled that up. That it mentioned in the Bible that those who receive the mark, it won't take well. They'll break out in rashes. They will go insane because of the fact that the body, they're trying to infuse the body through this technology. Things will go wrong.
Yeah, I mean, what's going to happen if you put an unliving instrument inside your body, if you graft yourself with that? I mean, there's going to be a reaction, and it's not going to be a pleasant one. It's only logical, but like a lot of people don't even think about that. They don't think about the downside to having say virtually a smartphone implanted inside of your eyeballs, or your occipital nerve.
And what's even scarier, Johnny, is what if they say, okay, well, you know, we tried to implement the technology through the original eye, but because we lost it, now you have to get an artificial eye, which is completely augmentation. So eventually, they're just going to rot off each and every single freaking part of your body so that they can replace it with an augmented one to make sure that it works. You know?
Right, and then eventually, if they keep doing it, you have to ask yourself, where does the living aspects of me begin and where does it end?
Yeah. You know, and they're already doing this kind of stuff with something called biohacking, where people are putting RFID chips in their freaking hands so they can wave it and they open up the door, which is stupid. I mean, oh, I don't want to turn a knob. I just want
I'm
to wave
too
my
lazy
hand.
to turn a knob. I know.
Yeah, well, maybe you deserve that because you're an idiot. You know.
Yeah, pretty much.
But what's happening is that, and I've seen videos of this before with these biohackers, is that when they put that stuff in their arm, it starts to break out into a rash. Their arm starts swelling up, and because the you have a foreign piece of something in your body.
Right, exactly. I mean, think about that too. I mean, that could even be worse than a rash. I mean, what if you have such a horrible reaction to it, you start developing like MRSA, or a flesh-eating virus?
Then you got to get an augment for that.
Yeah, you'll give you an augment for that one too. Right, exactly. That's something I think that people don't readily foresee. What we were talking about last week about holistic people. It's transhumanism is going to prey upon the wishes of holistic people that are so materially concerned about this, that, and the other, that they would happily alter themselves with an inorganic substance.
Yeah.
And infuse themselves with that inorganic substance in order to attain a higher level of materiality than they already had.
Well, that's why, it's so important to have the eyes to see and the ears to hear, or begin to develop that. I don't know if that's something that you can develop. I think it is, but I think it's more of a spiritual thing, which is another side effect of not having the gnosis that you need to know that these things are coming and they're going to be bad, and don't buy into it because...
Okay. What if you do have the gnosis to not buy into it like we do? Okay. How could we be punished by refusing this type of, well, essentially it's a medical treatment, but or a medical operation? What would be the consequences of refusing it? By saying, no, I don't want a fake eyeball, or no, I don't want a chip implanted into my the back of my hand. What do I do?
Well, that's a great segue into another thing that I didn't mention in the beginning, but I think if you refuse it and you lose an eye, then you're just not going to have an eye. Or it's going to be a situation where, okay, you don't have this augment that you need for your job. Like you work in you work on the road. You're a road construction worker.
Sure.
And all of their technology requires an augment that you need, like built in, like a tool into your arm or whatever. I don't know. But you'll need that to do your job. But more importantly, let's not even go there. Let's make it even more simple. If you don't have the social credit system, you don't have that mark, then you're not going to be able to get a job at all.
Right.
And so that's how they'll punish you. If you don't have our little card or biometric or whatever the mark is, then you don't buy or sell or eat or have a job.
Right. So not only do you get to buy, or you no longer are able to buy or sell goods, you're also no longer to earn a living to buy or sell goods in the first place.
Right. Yeah. And the other side effect to that is something that we were mentioning off air, is another side effect of 5G, which this is just me thinking and trying to figure out where this is all going. But 5G is so it's the side effects are bad. Okay. And I believe that what they're trying to do is through 5G, possibly through other things as well, but let's just use 5G as an example. If you don't have if you're not augmented, or you don't have that mark or whatever it is, then let's say that mark has the ability to reflect or deflect those Wi-Fi signals that are coming through these smart cities. Then they and keep in mind that they're going to put these 5G things like within 100 to 500 feet of each other everywhere. So
Yeah.
it's like standing in front of a it's like standing underneath an X-ray for like 8 hours a day, you know.
So they're
saying,
going to be as common as a phone pole.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. They're going to be everywhere. It's not going to be spatial. And you think, well, you know, if it increases the bandwidth so much, why do you need so many of them? You know, but it's because, you know, possibly the fact that they're going to need so many of them, but also because of the more devious agenda, which is if you don't have that augment that kind of like deflects some of that stuff, or your body does not receive it properly through the augment, it's kind of like a, you know, let's say like a electricity wire, or a grounding wire. Let's say some of the augments have the ability to ground some of that stuff so it doesn't affect you. Well, if you don't, or if you're not augmented, that 5G is going to kill you. So what I think they're going to do possibly with smart cities is they're going to extinguish the most of the people, the population that does not have the augmentations, and they're going to kill them off through radiation and various other different ways. And so then you'll only have a city of augmented people.
Right, and the thing too, it could work inversely as well. I mean, look at somebody who is born and raised in a 5G smart city. They actually, for some reason, leave it. You know, they are no longer inundated with that 5G radiation that they're used to. That'll be a shock to the system for them. You know, you wouldn't dare leave the confines of that city because you're inextricably linked to it now. You know, it would actually be somewhat poisonous of you to leave, say, Toronto.
Yeah, and I think that was another thing that was mentioned regarding other information that I was researching, which was that these cities, if you were to leave them, if you left them, then you could die because of the fact of, I don't know, maybe they're going to start a freaking bio warfare, and these cities are going to be like the little hives that people stay in because you can't go outside of them.
Safety enclaves, yeah, or at least that's kind of what they're going to tell people. You know, I mean, there will be those that would try to, probably young people that would try to breach those boundaries, but you know, they'll probably get taken care of.
We have to ask yourself, Johnny, how do you keep a population in a smart city and make them stay there without making them leave? How would you keep them within the boundaries of that city?
You would have to, first of all, you have to scare the living shit out of them to keep them in there. Kind of like in that movie, The Village, where, you know, they were not allowed to venture out into the forest because of this, you know, man-eating beast that was wandering that forest. And, you know, for generations and generations, people were, you know, well, for a couple of generations, were abiding by that. You know, they lived under the specter of that danger.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different ways they could do that. I mean, they could start a bio warfare epidemic, and then everybody in these smart cities gets augmented or inoculated with something, and that's the only place you can be is there. I mean, you could go that way. You could have a 1984 situation where they drop fake bombs and people don't venture out. Or more or less, I think what they might do is they'll just have a curfew, and if you leave, then you're done. You go to jail.
Right.
Because of all the crime. You know, it's always, I think the main tenet of it, it's always crime, danger of crime, and keep people inside, you know?
Yep. Think about the children, keep the kids safe. Yeah. And if you were out past, say, I don't know, let's be fair, 10 p.m., you get arrested and sustain a horrible draconian punishment.
Torture.
yeah, that that wouldn't lend you enough time to leave the city and get back. You know, you wouldn't be able to get out of the confines of the smart city with that allotted amount of time, especially if you know, like, you do have a job and you're off at 5. I only have 5 hours left to get inside and stay indoors and be a nice, safe little citizen. Also, there could be other preclusions too, where, say, I don't know, the Department of Natural Resources says you're not allowed to live out here in the sticks. This is protected wildland, and your carbon footprint's too big.
Exactly.
They find you out there in a little trailer or bungalow or something, they'll arrest you.
Well, that's, part of the plan for Agenda 21 or 30 or one of those two is that they're going to push out a lot of people that are living in rural areas so they can move them into these smart cities. Or I was thinking about this driving today. If you pay attention to what cities are being built a lot, like what are the major cities, those are more than likely going to be the smart cities. And what cities are not being built, the rural ones, they're going to be either built into smart cities or they're going to push people out of them. I can just envision, because that's another way of control that you mentioned about how, let's say you only have 5 minutes to get to work or 5 minutes to get home or 10 minutes to get home from work. So you're forced to take public transportation because it's the fastest, because cars have been banned, which is another part of their agenda. We'll talk about that in just a minute, and then I want to jump to another thing here. And so that's a way of control. You have a allotted amount of time to get to work and only a lot amount of time to go back home from work, so that you don't have any time to loiter. And let's say, like on the weekends, people are allowed to go to the city off of work. But they're definitely, I envision a curfew. I envision people on the street with big electric batons, like off of Gary's Mod and frickin'.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, what was that game? Gary's Mod? It's Gary's
Mod. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, Half-Life.
I just picture that. And then they have these big screens that are up on there, and they're like, to prevent, our crime has been dropping, but you must stay inside to do this, and da 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 da. And I'm sure it'd be a female voice because all that, but
because we listen to the women's.
And it's soothing, psychological, disarming. If you want people to listen, also Blade Runner 2049 is another example of a smart city in a lot of ways. But I want to let's jump to talking about the Georgia Guidestones a little bit.
Sure.
As I mentioned, again, 5G. We have a lot of overweight people in America today. I view that these people are not going to make it. Their bodies are not going to be able to handle it. And also the Georgia Guidestones just so happens to align with the fact that they're trying to depopulate the earth. And wonder what the reason for that is. I wonder if it's because they want a whole bunch of augmented non-humans.
Well, that could very much be the case. I think that I guess they are trying to build an exclusive club of those who can live and those who cannot live anymore. And I don't see how an overweight person could survive under the net of a 5G system, especially since it does emit so much, like you said, radioactive energy.
Yeah, and I'm sure that the social credit system also will play a factor in your weight as well. Like you're too heavy, you're taking too many.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's going to be, like in the Plandopolis films I was talking about, those little public service announcements. Everyone's going to have a calorie card and things. So,
that was.
I don't think the average person is going to have the opportunity to become overweight.
No, and that's another thing of 1984 is that they always manipulated the rationing of food, and that's the calorie count in a futuristic technological tyranny. Is you have a calorie? It's 1984. 1984 happened in 1984, but the same blueprint that they're laying will be taken to a technological level, where you have like a calorie card where food's being rationed because of whatever reason. Maybe there's a war. Maybe there's the fact that, more than likely maybe a war or something like that, because that would be a good excuse.
They do it with gasoline. Somebody farts in Syria or Iran, the price of the pump goes up $1.
Yeah. So it's manipulation, man. It's all manipulation. And another thing that you notice too is that when you pay attention to commercials or tabloids or whatever, which some of the websites that I get information from have tabloids. I don't pay attention to them. But you always see pictures of people wearing or have a phone next to their head. What this is doing is it's subliminally putting messages into people's heads that they're trying to get people to assimilate themselves with technology. That's why technology is always shown, especially wireless through the hand of the device. It's always shown to be, close to the head or near the body because it's subliminally getting people used to augmentation, I think.
Right. Yeah. They're trying to get it even closer and closer, and sooner or later they're just going to, be showing it as exactly as the way they want it, where it becomes fused within the body.
Yeah. And also, they are going to be this is another thing that I heard through the grapevine, is that right now they're going to be putting out a lot more power lines, or they're going to be doing something with energy, and they're now including a lot of areas that are being bought up by energy companies in rural areas specifically. Funny enough. That they need to lay more power lines because of the fact that they need more energy for cities, and that's all them laying groundwork for future smart cities, I think. And Johnny, you also mentioned about Chinese investors too.
Yeah, I mean, for instance, there was a power plant in my town that had closed down because of because coal is bad, and now we have a bunch of Chinese investors going to look for it to buy it up, and eventually just taking over the entire village, because that's where it's a turnkey operation for them. We can't do it, but for some reason, a Chinese investor could come in and buy that out and and fire that thing back up again to as much as they want, not even more so. And so what would that do? Well, that would force us out of the sticks, and we would have to go and get closer to whatever urban sprawl that would accommodate me.
Yeah. Well, China also is a communist socialist country, and I'm sure there's a direct connection also with the fact that there's a tariff thing going on with politics right now. It's
Right.
been cycled in the news, as well as that China makes a lot of stuff in America. So that's no coincidence that they laid that out there like that. They know that they're planning for something, and China just so happens to be a socialist country now. So, just so happens that they're moving into. So I guess they're the experts on how to turn America into a tyranny or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they've got the blueprint and the experience for it. That's for sure.
Well, we're almost out of time, but on the last note, I'd like to mention the May Day stuff because I think that also is very important.
Yes.
For those who don't know, May Day is a very occultic date, May 1st, also in spring. Also, spring basically is the season of sacrifice because it goes into the esoteric of they have to appease the demiurge. The way that it works is that the way that these oligarchs believe is that every year, just like there's a harvest before fall of all the so that's what they do now. They harvest their when the crops grow, they harvest them for the fall because the fall in occultically is the season of death because nothing grows and it's winter and everything dies. Everything goes into a dormant state. So the way that they occultically do sacrifice, and we're in the season of sacrifice, we're in the season of the harvest of souls, basically, is that the oligarchs believe that they have to give sacrifice to the demiurge in order for the demiurge to continue to keep providing resources to the planet. Now, if you watch a movie called Cabin in the Woods, it illustrates this perfectly, where you have a bunch of intelligence agencies storing a bunch of people and or I should say storing a bunch of demons and stuff in a deep underground base somewhere, and they kids go into this cabin and they sacrifice them to these entities because they believe that if they didn't do that, the entities would come up and kill them all. And so that's just something to keep aware of, that in spring, there's a lot of death that goes on, and I think that's because of the occultic significance of that. And so May Day, is May 1st is coming up, and that's May Day. In May Day, Johnny, you want to give people a rundown of May Day? I think you know a little bit more about this than I do, about the historical significance.
May Day is sort of like in terms of the Eastern Bloc countries back in prior to 1990. That was sort of like their July 4th. May Day was the birth of communism, and it is also kind of surprisingly shares the same date of Walpurgisnacht, which is Walpurgis Night in English, and that again is a night of sacrifice. And many other pagan and Druidic religions will also use May 1st as the day of the maypole. If you watch that movie, The Wicker Man, that is an example of a particularly bloodthirsty pagan cult that was using the rite of the maypole as a subject of sacrifice. The maypole is basically a giant phallic symbol.
It's pardon me. It's a fertility ritual, and basically you could look at it like, hey, you didn't get sacrificed, so be happy and go make more so that we can sacrifice them next time.
Right. You might not be on the list next year. Maybe you will.
Yeah. So go be happy about that and dance around a phallic symbol to keep the harvest going, right? Keep breeding like cattle. But another significant event that anybody who even cares, which you should, and if you don't, then that's fine, is that May 1st is when Microsoft is implementing their new terms and conditions, where they reserve the right to go into your private account if you're using offensive language or pornography or nudity or any of that, while using Office or Skype or Xbox Live services. If you disobey or they find something wrong with whatever you're doing, they reserve the right to review your private content and shut your account down just out of the blue because you did something that they didn't like.
My question is, okay, they're going to monitor Microsoft Office. Okay, fine. But bundled within Office is Microsoft Word, which is the #1 software application people write literature with. Anything from song lyrics to entire novels to theses and dissertations and articles and things like that. Sometimes these documents have foul language in them.
Mm-hmm.
So are we actually looking at the end of literature that has the F word in it, or?
Seems to be.
I guess we're going to have to find out in a few days, right?
I don't know, man. I think, I think they're being very vague, as they usually do. They're just giving you just enough information that they have.
Just like stupid YouTube always is,
Yeah, but it's probably going to be not just those accounts. It's going to be all services, probably. They're just not going to tell you that. They're just telling you the little bit. They're just giving you little increments here. But that's May 1st, and it just so happens that May 1st is when the Communist Party, Johnny, that became.
That's right. Yeah.
It was Adolf Hitler's birthday then. It was
April 20th was Adolf Hitler's birthday.
Okay, April 20th. Gotcha.
We already had that.
Yeah. And so it just so happens that event and the nature of what they're trying to do just so happens to align with the communist doctrine, because it's just when they do things. It's a significant date that they have to uphold. And so that's happening May 1st, and we'll just have to see where that goes. But it's a very important date that we need to be aware of due to all of the significant occultic dates and events that precede that. So that's March 1st, and I'll just read a couple paragraphs of what this is, of the Microsoft stuff. which is that it says that Microsoft is cracking down on what people say while using their services online. According to a new service agreement written by the company, the tech giant is planning to ban accounts that use offensive language and will go through your private data to investigate users. In the March 1st release, Microsoft is warning customers using Office, Xbox, Skype, and other products, Johnny, would be, I guess.
Yeah, anything. Anything that goes in, yeah.
That the company is prohibiting offensive language and inappropriate content starting on May 1st. Don't publicly display or use the services to share inappropriate content or material involving, for example, nudity, bestiality, pornography, or offensive language, graphic violence, or criminal activity. Microsoft warns in a proposition in their new codes of conduct. Microsoft also added that the company is planning on investigating users who are accused of violating the new policy and will block content from being sent to other people. So what does that mean? You're going to have somebody come to your frickin' door?
No, that means is that if you have offensive language, say in a Microsoft Word document, and you want to get it published, and you got to send it to a publisher, Microsoft won't even let you, even though the publisher is dying to get it from you. I guess what you would have to do is just pump it out in a printer and then give them the hard copy document of it. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll have to figure out how to deal with that. But you know, that is basically what they propose, or what they're saying they're going to do May 1st. And so be advised. Just watch.
This is just like totally going to end death metal. Death metal they won't be able to write any of their cool lyrics. It's all going to be like Spinal Tap.
You're just going to have to resort to a freaking notebook. That's what you're going to have to do.
Right. Cups and cakes. Cups and cakes.
It's like code word for death and evil or something, you know?
Right. You gotta, you're gonna have to like write Mary Poppins tunes and shit like that. Otherwise, you know, I guess you're just never going to be able to see publishing.
Yeah. So that's May 1st, and so just be advised. You know, just be advised. Pay attention if you care. Of what might come of that, and just, you know, like I've mentioned before, save stuff online that you think is important. So Johnny, is there anything else that we want to mention?
No, I think we're doing pretty good with this. But yeah, smart cities are on the way, and just kind of like our last point, you know, you're seeing exactly how one powerful tentacular corporation like Microsoft, and I'm sure Apple would follow suit, and Google and so forth, can prohibit action in your life that can preclude you from doing things by their terms and conditions. And you could always argue, well, hey, they're a private corporation, they can do what they want. That's true, they can. But when you become, and they will, but because you've become so dependent upon them, and I have, you know, I admit it.
I think we all have.
Yeah. You're going to find yourself in a bit of lurch because you're not being able to do what you used to do a month ago.
Yeah. Yep. And so, you know, this is, you know, if you want to do more research onto it, you need to go look it up. There's a bunch of stuff about people talking about it, but we wanted to just kind of give people the index of things that you know, it's on your own whether or not you decide to go and research this stuff. You know, we could spend our whole life going through every little detail of this stuff, but, you know, you're going to have to do some of this work on your own. You know, we could, if we wanted to, spend the rest of our life on Esoteric Lectures breaking down every incremental, minute detail down to what color the augments are going to be, you know?
Right.
But that's kind of against, it's kind of with, you know, time reasons prohibitable. You know, we have to talk about a lot of stuff. So it's up to you whether or not you want to go into this or whether you care. But nonetheless, you know, these are just some of the things that we're trying to warn about, and we're just trying to tell people and trying to get them to realize that, you know, stuff's coming our way, and you need to be aware of it if you care. If you don't, then I guess this is entertainment. And how you doing? Yeah.
How are ya?
Yeah. All right, Johnny. I think we should wrap it up. I don't think of anything else. I don't know of anything else to mention. I think that was all I had for today. And yeah. Anything
Yeah,
else?
I think we had a great show, and I think that we said what needed to be said. I think that a lot of people that are listening in and will be listening in on the final edited version of this is, we'll have something to take away from, because May 1st is only, what, 8 or 9 days away. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not a lot of time to prepare for a new phase of tyranny, which we're going to experience.
Yeah, don't leave the house is, I think, what you should do.
Right.
All right. Well, I appreciate everybody for tuning in today. Well, you know what, Johnny? Before I do that, let me check and see what people are saying
Okay.
real quick. Shout out to Trav. Shout out to Bitman. We know those guys. How you guys doing? Father No. Thanks for the response. But blah, blah, blah. Johnny, what is that word? I'm terrible with words. Artilects that Father No says. Articlects.
Articles.
Oh God, I'm terrible. God. It looked weird. Oh, it's a misspelling, I guess. Trav says, just think about the utility they can force on men. Absolutely. People will be begging to get out and be a slave. Yes. See what else.
Yeah, they're going to sell it as fun. They're going to make your enslavement look like Disneyland, and then once you get through the gates, you realize it ain't Mickey Mouse.
And shout out to Jeff Bynes. Yeah, absolutely. They're going to sell this like it's fun and cool, just like they sell iPhones and make people pay $1,000 for them because you can your face can look like a giraffe or whatever the hell.
Oh God,
crap that is. All right, thanks guys for tuning in, and we'll be till our next show. We'll be on again, and thanks for tuning in. Thanks for all the people in the chat, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks for popping in, and you all have a good midnight.